could have possibly worked very well during the COVID pandemic, being digital rather than face-to-face?
Well, no, digital age is actually about the way in which you do business. So we now all do business digitally.
Right.
So that's what digital age is about, is the fact that we all have businesses in an ecosystem of digital.
Right.
And unfortunately, most businesses don't understand the implications of their digital environment. So that's where digital age comes from.
Okay, well that makes sense to me.
Make a lot of sense.
Yeah, because a lot of times what happens is I get contracts for sale of business, let's say, and it's a very traditional sale of business contract, and it doesn't mention anything about social media, it doesn't mention anything about website being transferred. So all of that property, which is property of the business,
The intellectual
property is not being transferred in a lot of agreements now. And it's the failure of the lawyers really to understand that business now operates in such a digital ecosystem and all of those. So for instance, if you've got a Stripe account, what happens? And it's connected to your internet, to your website for payments. You know, that's a bank account, but it's not a traditional type of bank account. So that's what we're really focused on at Digital Age Lawyers, is ensuring that not just businesses, but also even in your personal life, that you understand the implications of the new world we live in. So for instance, if you die tomorrow, what happens to all your social media accounts?
Oh, they live forever.
Well, no, you can actually appoint a digital executor, and they can actually, in your will, and they can actually shut it down. Yeah. So this is what I mean. So in all of our wills that we draft, because we understand the world we all now currently live in, we appoint for our clients a digital executor that has the ability to close down accounts. Because otherwise,
I don't want to live forever.
well, you know, I did actually say to somebody once, you know, do you have a will? And they did announce to me that they were going to live forever, and I did point out to them that actually nobody's lived forever, including Jesus Christ. Even he had to die, and they didn't particularly like that answer. But nobody is going to live forever. So that's where the concept of digital age came from. We are also paperless. We've been paperless for more than 10 years. So we have no paper in the office. We were using Zoom and Teams long before COVID, because we also want to cut costs as much as possible. So I'm the principal solicitor at Digital Age Lawyers. My name's Katherine Hawes. I established Digital Age Lawyers approximately 10 years ago. And the reason I set it up was with the philosophy of making law understandable, affordable and accessible, particularly for those in business, because we always talk about why businesses fail, but we never investigate a lot of the times the reasons. And a lot of the times the reasons is because business owners may be great at graphic design, whatever else their talent is, but operating a business, they fail to understand that legal environment. And I'll give you an example. One of my clients, they started a swimwear design company, the two of them. The swimwear design company, they decided to run a competition on social media. Sounds great so far, doesn't it? You know, gets publicity, good marketing, you know, they ran it on Instagram, you know, and they chose, you had to put an image of your favourite beach. And they chose an image and, you know, they packaged up their new swimwear, sent it off to the winner. Yeah, slight problem with that. The winner was a 12-year-old girl, and her mother was not impressed with the lack of clothing that was around the swimsuit. And she took to social media, she took to their Instagram account. They lost a lot of customers because of it. they eventually closed the business, probably 6 months after, and it was ultimately due to their failure to understand, yes, it may be great marketing, but what are the rules around competitions on social media? You know, they should have had a box saying, are you over 18? You know, all of these, and they just failed to understand it. So that's why we were so passionate about setting up digital age lawyers.
Well, the other one too is Facebook and other platforms are international. They aren't Australian law.
No, well, it's irrelevant. No, it's irrelevant. You are a publisher in Australia, you are liable.
But if the publication actually happens overseas?
If you are an Australian business with a Facebook or Instagram account, it's here.
That's not my understanding.
Well, I've got 35 years. No, it's not. It is. If you are an Australian business, you are caught by Australian laws.
And if you use a VPN to publish it in the USA or Japan or the Netherlands, which I do regularly, then the publication is actually overseas international law.
No, it's not. Sorry. I've done this for 35 years.
I bow down to your knowledge.
There's a case in Macquarie Bank, and no, it's not. And it was one of the first international cases. So they can still apply it. It's called extraterritorial law. So, in terms of one of the areas where businesses fail the most is in terms of not understanding their business structure. So a lot of clients come into me having, already set up their business. So for instance, I had a digital marketing agency come to me this week. She started off as a sole practitioner, sole trader. She was relatively small. She's located in the Northern Territory. And now she's been given grants and she's been given a contract by the Northern Territory government, but they don't like the fact she's a sole trader. So she now has to change into being a company because she's now also going to get employees. She's leasing premises. There's a whole raft of reasons why her business would now change. So one of the key things that a lot of businesses get wrong is not understanding their business structure and the requirements that go with it. People come into me and they go, oh yes, I'm in a partnership that's a company, and I go, well, you're just confused. No, it doesn't quite work that way. And they don't understand, the obligations if you are in a company, what it means to be a director of that company. Lots of people go to me, I didn't understand what I was signing. I've got a little hint for you, judges really don't care. You sign it, unless there is some reason that is, that you can show you're under some duress, mental health issue, something of that nature, you sign it, you're obligated to what you signed. So this is really one of the fundamental basics of what business owners need to understand. And, the problem is that the law is not forgiving. If you fail to understand your obligations, then it's not like you get a get out of jail free card for your first pass. Okay? It is very much about the fact that you need to understand it. When it comes to sole traders, again, it's a great way of starting a business because what it means is that, you can start relatively simply. If you're, you don't always end then maybe if you're not going to trade a lot. But the thing is, you need to look at the risks. If you're a sole trader, it's great that all the money is yours, but it's not so great that all the responsibility is yours. Okay? All the liability is yours. So a lot of times people ask me, what should they have? Well, it really depends on what you want to achieve out of business. Okay, so for instance, I've got one photographer. She only does about 5 weddings a year. She does it so she can get money for the family holiday, and that's all she wants. She doesn't want to be, you know, a Vogue wedding photographer or any of that nature. She doesn't want to have staff. She doesn't want to do baths, any of those things. So for her, a sole trade is fine. What's the risk? And she takes out her insurance, that's about it. Okay, so it really does depend what you want out of your business. And I don't think a lot of people actually think about that. One of the things that was taught to me was, you know, you either start a business for a legacy, that is for family, or you start a business to sell it. One thing you should never do is fall in love with your business, because it is just a business. Okay? It's not going to be there at your funeral crying. So, and I think that's a really important thing that people need to remember when they're looking at their business structures. How involved do they want to be? The other area where people get very creative and then get themselves very much into trouble, and their creativity comes from creating their own contracts. Okay? I have never seen so many copy and paste. I had one contract that was sent to me to review, and it had the American Congress, US Congress in there. And I'm going, man, you didn't have it to copy and paste. No, I said, what? Seriously, it's in there. It's really interesting sometimes when I go in and actually read the contracts, how many things people haven't read, haven't understood. There is, at the moment, and this is particularly if you have a contract where it is a fee for service over a period of time, and it's a standard form. So for instance, you might have a 24-month contract for your social media. Those standard form contracts have undergone some scrutiny recently because of their vagueness, and also the fact, 24 months is a long time now. You think about how quickly business had to change during COVID, and that was what, 2 months. Okay, so there is going to be a raft of changes that businesses who have those type of contracts will need to come up to speed about. And if you issue a contract that falls below the new standard, there's actually up to a $2.5 million fine. Okay? And I'll give you a little hint, the government's short of money. So where there are fines, they're not waiving them. Okay, so you do need to be on top of your contractual obligations. So what I generally say to business owners is there are great benefits in having a contract. So how many of you can remember what you had for lunch on the 25th of March in the year 2016? Oh, what about 2020 on the 16th of March? Any takers? No? How about last Wednesday? No. Okay, so imagine if you were asked to remember what agreement you came to 5 years ago with somebody. It'd be really hard, wouldn't it? Okay? And that is the benefit of having a written contract. Okay? Because it is proof of what you've agreed to do and what the other party has agreed to do. And that really is what a contract is. I know a lot of people go, oh, if I give them a contract, they're not going to give me the business. Well, my answer to that is they're probably not worth doing business with. Because it does facilitate clearly for you what you are going to provide, and also what the other party is going to provide. Because, that's where a lot of the time people get themselves very confused. And a lot of the time it is because of the fact they do things on social media platforms. So for instance, I had a case where it was a event manager, a florist, and a photographer. It sounds like a bar joke, really. No, they didn't all walk into the bar. They all walked into a 1-year-old's birthday party, and they all had a loose agreement. So the event manager had contracted with the florist through Instagram photos. Hint, I'm not recommending this in any way, about how much greenery was required for the 1-year-old's birthday party, because it was an enchanted forest. Then what happened was the photographer took the photos, so who owned the photos of the 1-year-old's birthday party? That was a separate issue. The event manager and the florist then had a disagreement because the 1-year-old was very disappointed with how much greenery was available and made a complaint, obviously. So, and this was because they just did things from pictures. So who would know what $1,200 of greenery looks like from pictures? Okay? And this is where they got into nearly an 8-week battle about payment. And what it did was it took their mind off their business. It was the fact that they didn't have any written agreement between them. And then it was the vagueness of what they had agreed. What did these photos even mean? And the one thing I say to people is, the last thing you want in life is a judge interpreting your contracts. Okay? Because you are then having a third party determine what you agreed. So that's why it is so important. So what I say to business owners is to actually do an exercise whereby you draw your business in the middle as a circle, and then you think about all the contracts and people that come into your business. So graphic designers, photographers, it could be social media, it could be a VA. All of them require agreements with you. It could be a business coach. I did a business coach agreement yesterday. Oh, it was a shocker. It was some of the worst language I had ever seen. They were going to have 4 consults at some point during the month for $2,200. I said, please give me the job. It was as vague. So you need to think about all of the people that come into your business. Then you need, which I call is all your upstream contracts. So all contracts that sit up there. Then you need to look at all the contracts that you're responsible. So your clients, your customers, your privacy policy, your website terms and conditions. And then think about what you have to do. So that's really what you need to think about, because this is about protecting your business. And it's much better to do it before there's a problem. Because you know what, it's so much easier to say to somebody, I refer to your clause 5 of the agreement you signed that says I'll deliver within 14 weeks. I delivered within 7, so please pay. It's much easier. It's also much easier to ensure that you can terminate a client. It's much easier to ensure your own time. So these are what we say should go in your terms and conditions, particularly with your clients or your customers. And termination of services is one of the key ones. So in terms of, I was doing some work with an architectural firm, and what was happening is they would get the client come in, they'd have the DA might be 3 months away till it expires, and the architect would do the plans within a month, send it to the client. The client would then merely wait the day before it expired in order to get their changes back. So that meant a huge amount of stress for the staff. It also meant that occasionally they didn't make it, and then it was whether or not that was their fault. And this was all because they did not have clear terms and conditions. So what we put in there was you had 14 days from receipt to make changes. If you didn't, then you would go to the bottom of their pile. Do you know how quickly people started to make changes? And what that did was it evened out their work for them. And that made such a difference to their business. Instead of this, angst all the time that they weren't going to make a DA. So it's really important to set out not just what you're going to provide, but also what you expect your customers or clients to provide. And a lot of the time that's not what we do. Similarly, business coach one I did, and what we put in, his one was, if you failed to do the exercises he gave, if you failed to make appointments, then you're, saying it didn't work or it wasn't successful. You couldn't, because you didn't do what we set out. So it's really important to think about these key areas. What we say are the essential documents. If you're in business with somebody, have a partnership agreement. Confidentiality agreements are really important in this day and age. If you are pitching to investors, even if you're entering into a collaboration, referral, MOU, I don't care what it is, you need to start protecting your intellectual property. Okay? And look, we all like to collaborate, but that collaboration should be put down on paper and it should be agreed to. Because the other problem is, what happens if you die tomorrow? I did have one client that wanted to do a seance in court because, the judge could then hear from George directly. Needless to say, I failed to take up that advice from them. But it is about the fact that if it's not written down, what mess are you leaving as well? The other is, if you decide to sell, any person coming in is going to look at things like protection of intellectual property, trademark, all of those issues. And by not having them, you're not looking like, even though you might on paper look like a successful business, there is added risk there. So these are really things that you need to start to think about up front all the time. When we talk about intellectual property, the two areas realistically in business that cause the most angst is copyright and trademark. Now, trademark is the mark of your business. So logo, brand name, tagline. Now, for social media, these have become much more important. So, for instance, I stopped a competitor of one of my clients from using their tagline, from using their trademark in hashtags on Instagram. So this is now the power of a trademark. So trademark is that it must be registered. You must use it. So what that means is you can't have what we call defensive trademarks. That is, you register it because you don't want somebody else to have it. It actually has to be used. It must be identified with your product or service. You can also, the good thing with trademark, and we do this for a lot of our clients because we have a lot of international clients, is you can then register in different countries as well. So the thing about trademark is, if you fail to trademark your business name, then somebody else can and stop you from using it. So everybody thinks business name registration is the bee's knees of protecting your name. It's not. Trademark is the way in which you do that.
I heard very last century that before the New South Wales cops had highway patrol, someone tried to trademark highway patrol so they could get.
Yeah, a lot of people do different things, but the thing is with it, it's real. The thing with trademark is that I've had businesses that have had to actually rebrand because they've either failed to look it up beforehand or they have not trademarked and then other people have taken the name.
Yeah, stolen it.
Yep. Now, the good thing with trademark is it can be registered, whereas for copyright, it just exists. And it's a lot harder with copyright. It is the direct copying of your original idea. And business owners think, well, hang on, what's that? Well, it can actually be your intake forms. So I just settled a matter actually between two mediation services, which in itself sounds a bit funny. But the two mediation services, one person left and they took all of the forms, all of the procedures, all of the policies, and set up in competition. Now that is a breach of copyright. So I'm trying to get businesses to understand that it's not just, you know, your, what we call your really artistic, like your website design and your photos. It is also a lot of your material. And, you know, one of the biggest is, you know, is the confidential information that goes with it. So in terms of your client data, in terms of your client email list, you know, imagine if somebody walks out with all of that, they can set up in competition with you tomorrow. So it really is about protecting that. And, you know, a lot of the ways you can do that is in your employment agreements, but it is also just about, you know, when a person leaves, reminding them of their obligations of confidentiality, and then taking action to actually protect, because it's really important. Trade secrets and confidentiality are more and more in business becoming a key. Not just in terms of your ability to market to those people, but clients and customers are becoming more and more concerned about their data, how it's stored, who has access to it, is it offshored, is it here. That in the next 12 months is going to be a real issue for business, with new data and privacy laws coming into effect. So at the moment, if you are a business under 3 mil, you sort of get a bit of a get out of jail card, you know, for data breaches. Under the new legislation, there is no difference between, you know, MBF as a client and, you know, yourself. It's going to be, every business is going to be treated exactly the same. Now, social media. Okay, so the thing with social media as a business owner, as the owner of a Facebook page, Instagram, you know, whatever other medium it is, I mean, there are so many platforms now, you are the owner of that information and you are legally responsible for that. Not just what you put up, but comments other people put up. So as a business owner, it is your page, your responsibility. So it's really important, and I know a lot of digital marketers say don't use the delete button. I say please use the delete button. Okay? If it is inappropriate content, if it is defamatory, if it is misleading. And what I mean by that is the fact that with comments made on your posts, can't mislead the public. So I did a matter where my client had a Facebook page and a Shopify account behind it. The Facebook page, all they did was sell tea. Now they just said their tea tasted nice. People started to write on there that their tea was great, they lost weight. They failed to remove those comments. So they were actually fined because they didn't have approval as weight loss. They didn't have any of the approvals. It was misleading to the customers.
On that basis, like if I make a comment about your business,
Yep.
which is wrong,
Yep.
I should be the one responsible for.
No, this is not in terms of service delivery or comments. This would be if you wrote on my page, you know, something along the effect, all niggers need to die. Then
Okay,
that would, but if I fail to remove that,
But you didn't put it on.
it doesn't matter. The law sees me as a publisher. So that would be the same as the Sydney Morning Herald in publishing a letter to the editor that had that, would be held to account. So this is where business owners need to remember that this is the same as, you know, a broadsheet or anything else.
that I understand.
Yeah,
Because there's a few websites where you cannot publish anything. or make
exactly. A number of contracts I do for membership-based groups, we don't allow comments for that reason.
No, it
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. So and it is really important that businesses understand that they are the publisher. Because I'm running it now. The other thing is just remember in using social media, you may give away trade secrets unnecessarily or without intention. So, sometimes tweeting or Instagramming where you are, what you're doing, if it's for a business meeting that's confidential, don't do it. Just start to be very aware and very, think about, is this something that the world needs to know right at the moment? What I'm suggesting to all businesses is to have a social media policy. Some of my clients, particularly in the building industry, so one of my clients has got a very large fine from WorkCover because the apprentice put up a YouTube video of them being stupid on the work site. Let me assure you, the police and WorkCover don't have to go very much further than Reels, Instagram and YouTube to find people. Because you put it up there, it's in the public sphere. I also had one of the owners of a very large construction company fined. He was showing how the roof, how they could put this roof on this building all in one go. And they fined him because he didn't have his hard hat on, he didn't have his vest on, he didn't have his boots on. It was a promotional video, but he still got fined. So these are, why I say every business now should have a social media policy about who can post what, and have some really strict guidelines around it. Because ultimately it's you that's going to end up with the fine. So this is all about, as I say to business owners, there's two words you really need to think about. Are you controlling your business? Are you protecting your business? And if you don't have some of these legal requirements in place, you're not doing either. The other thing is, particularly now, with the work from home, if your staff are working at home, are they working on a device you've bought? Are they working on their home computer? If it's their home computer, then what firewalls do they have? What systems do they have? Who else has access to that computer? And are they actually losing data? I talked about social debt. So, you can be haunted from the grave. What we say is that you need to, tell people. I have had family disputes around Facebook memorial pages and who gets to manage them, post them and other things. So again, we put in a digital executor. So I go back to what I said at the beginning. Our focus is on ensuring your business is protected and you're controlling your business in the digital environment in which we exist. Employment. Okay, probably one of the biggest areas that gets people's attention. I think about it like this. If you asked a taxi driver to drive you to Crow's Nest, stop on the way to pick up some pink cupcakes, and then stop on the way to do your laundry, then stop on the way to pick up your post, how do you think that might go down? Probably not good. If you had a chauffeur and asked all of that, because they're your employee, that would be their job. And that's a clear indication between what is a contractor. Taxi driver is a one-off job, might never see the same person ever again. That's a contract.
So a chauffeur driver.
If you employ them, they were your employee.
Might have to see this.
Then, what have we got? Okay, I've done the privacy. Defamation. Basically, defamation has increased in Australia only because of social media, and it goes back to what I previously said, that, derogatory comments around third parties, you need to be, very mindful that defamation is a very expensive tool that can be wielded quite easily by people.
Did you see on the ABC, Ben Roberts has to pay 910 million,
No, I think
less
it's a
than a
bit
million,
less than that.
910,000 before he can take it to appeal.
The other thing is on your websites and on your social media, don't make misleading or deceptive conduct. We've got a lot of information on our website around a lot of this. We've got a lot of flyers around some of the checklists for doing an audit of your business. So thank you very much.
Really interesting, you've got no Facebook stuff.
Oh, you can
Is that
find us. It's
trusted?
called Google.
How about patents?
Okay, patents. Generally, the rules around patents are quite complex. Normally, we work with an engineer or whoever else. But yeah, patents are also, the thing with a patent is you must actually patent it before you release it to the public. And same with circuit designs in games, NFTs, same thing. You need to do it beforehand.
So patent is for ideas or a product?
No, it's actually for, so think about a patent is for a tangible instrument of some, so it's normally manufacturing or chemical science and things like that.
I was just wondering if I didn't have a tangible thing, but I had a digital payment system with a fantastic algorithm.
Yep.
Encryption or
So that
whatever.
probably come under,
Would that be patented?
well, I think it would fall more under design circuitry, which is a separate act.
Okay.
Because patent, the way I normally explain patent is, think about particularly medical instruments. So think
Physical
about,
world.
yeah, where the first, heart surgery instruments were about this big, and they were patented, and then people have redesigned them, retooled them. That's really what it's more about. So it's more that's what from my point of view, it's normally the scientific things.
The real reality rather than unreal.
Well, exactly. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.